Good morning, everybody. Wow, huh? What is today? Today's July 23rd, 2020, and it's almost 9 a.m. And so, um, thank you for tuning into this video. This video is, I'm going to share with you some thoughts that I'm having this morning about parent-child interaction and how, um, as oftentimes parents will describe as their child as being defiant or oppositional. And I just, I deal with this all the time as a family counselor. For those of you who know me and have watched some of my videos, for the last decade, I've been a family counselor, family therapist, working with families who are in high levels of conflict. Um, Throughout my career over 30 years as a counselor, I've often worked with people who are dealing with chronic issues. People who have been to many different counselors or many different services, and nothing is changing in their life. And so I've dedicated my career to addressing kind of these chronic problems. And and so one of the things that I often run into, I guess you could say, and support people with, as I mentioned, when it comes to families, is what parents will say is a child's defiance or opposition, that they're not getting a lot of cooperation from the child, and especially their teen. And so I have to, I guess you could say, kind of connect a lot of dots for the parents to help them solve the mystery as to why this is happening. Because if they don't look into this a little deeper, then a lot of times they just default into that label, and then the next step is some form of medication, but it doesn't really help the situation. And there can be a lot of reasons why, um, any person, any human being, adult, child, teenager in this case, might present themselves as defiant or oppositional. And so as I was discussing this with parents recently, um, I wanted to share a few ideas with them. Now, again, regardless of how that occurs, whether it's a cognitive developmental issue, if it's just trauma, if you will, related, it's often the case as well. Um, it doesn't matter, but here's the idea, right? First of all, I was suggesting is that one of the things that we do throughout our lives, but especially probably when we're children and when we're in our teen years, is that we're trying to build, if you will, what we call self efficacy. And in fact, as parents, we also want to orchestrate opportunities and support the idea of building self efficacy. What does that mean? It means that as human beings, obviously, we all get dealt a hand of cards. Life is what it is, and it doesn't have to be significant, but life each day has a certain set of trials or challenges, and we step up to the plate. Hopefully, as human beings, we do that, and we face those challenges. And if we can overcome those challenges, that helps us to feel a sense of confidence and ultimately self esteem. Um, so we exert our own efforts, our own energy, towards resolving certain challenges and issues. And when we're successful, we learn that, hey, you know what? I can do this. I can make some decisions for myself. I can exert some energy towards something and have it pay off. And we feel good about that, right? Don't we, as human beings? We feel good when we face trials and challenges and we overcome those. That's really important, to help us feel good about ourselves. And little kids are always doing this. You ever see a little kid, you know, parent says, "Oh, well, let me help you with that." And what does the little kid say? "No, I can do it." you know. No, parent, again, here, let me help you with that. Let me, it would be so much easier if you just let me help you, or do it this way. Or, and so you've got parents, who are trying to provide coaching and instruction and information and direction, and just kind of pouring on all their wisdom and knowledge and trying to help this child resolve a particular issue. And maybe, within the teen years, maybe it's, the teen doesn't feel like they have a lot of friends, or they don't have good friends, or maybe they feel like they're not attractive enough or whatever. And there's all sorts of social problems at this point, that they're having, maybe, and parents try to step in and give all this direction, all this coaching, all this advice. And all parents will even say to me, I think when I open my mouth and I try to give my son or daughter advice, all they hear is, like, the character from, Charlie Brown, rah, 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 rah. And I think to myself, I go, yeah, you're probably right. That's about all they hear. And then you see the eyes roll back, and then the teen gets irritated, right? And then the parent gets irritated because they feel like the child is not respecting their wisdom, or their parent feels kind of let down because they've made this attempt to provide all this instruction and direction and coaching, and and their child isn't interested in it. And so then they end up calling that oppositional or defiant. And it's kind of like, I think at first, probably, under normal conditions, um, things don't start out as defiant and oppositional. But when a parent keeps doing this, when a parent keeps trying to provide instruction and direction and coaching and advice and all this, and the parent says, I don't know, why are you not listening to me? Why don't you care? Why don't you respect what I have to say? And so the parent starts to get emotionally dysregulated, and then the child starts to get dysregulated, and things start to escalate, and pretty soon then there's resentments that start to build up, et cetera, et cetera. And then it becomes what really looks like defiance and opposition, and with that, some possible aggression and hostility, things of this nature. But it didn't start out that way. But the more it goes that way, oftentimes, because parents, if you will, I guess you could say, have the most power, it often turns into a parent going, well, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to provide all this great stuff, and my child just keeps getting angry with me. So they definitely must be defiant and oppositional, and I need to get them to a doctor to uh, to get some medication, to get a diagnosis on this. Yeah, and I'm going, no, no, that's really not what is going on here. What's going on here, again, think about, is all of us as human beings naturally want to exert some of our own energy towards solving our challenges and trials, because that's how we feel good about ourselves. And all of us as parents want our children to feel confident that they can handle life challenges. Well, how is your heart's desire as a parent, if that's your desire for your child to feel good about themselves because they face challenges, how are they ever going to accomplish that feeling, attain that feeling, if you're always giving advice and coaching and counsel and sharing your wisdom? It's not going to happen. You might feel good about yourself as a parent, and I think oftentimes that's what's driving this. You kind of dust for fingerprints here, and you kind of see, well, why is this parent so, zealous and even overzealous, that, towards this goal of their child being so kind of, appreciative of all this knowledge and guidance. And you'll often find, that a parent is trying to compensate for some level of distress that they might be in because of what has happened in their own past. We all make choices in life, and some of those choices are bring us pain, bring us suffering, bring us distress. And of course, most parents will, Say, hey, I went down these roads when I was growing up or in my life journey, and it didn't work out well, but I learned from it. And so the last thing I want is for my child to go down that road. See, so that's a very common story parents will tell. I don't want you to go down this road because this is what I went through. Sometimes parents will share what they went through, other times they won't, but it'll be in the background. And it'll be a reason why parents become overzealous in wanting to give advice and to lecture and to provide coaching, but it blows up in their face and they actually end up pushing the child away from them and towards some level of risk, if you will, something risky, something potentially dangerous. And I was thinking about this, just a few moments ago, trying to explain this. It's like, imagine, you know, well, here's a simple example. Let's say a child and a parent, teen and a parent get into some level of argument or what have you. And the teen says to himself as a result of the argument, well, screw you, right? I'll show you. You think I'm going to make nothing of myself. You think I'm going to do this, or, I'll show you, I'll really screw up now. And so now the teenager ends up, like making a poor decision and kind of rushing down that road of whatever that decision was. Like maybe you don't want me to be with a certain person or hang out with a certain group of friends. Oh, screw you. I'll show you. I'll hang out with whoever I want. You think my friends are bad and a bad influence? Let me show you what bad influence is. And now, the teen is rushing down this road towards something risky. Well, why did that happen? Right? Why is the teen rushing down the road? Well, because of what the parent did, you know, the lecturing, the nagging, the constantly blaming or bringing up past issues and failures, etc. And so here's the point. It's like we all need to exercise some free will of our own. We all need to make some free will choices. A lot of those choices are not going to be the best. They're either going to be dead ends or they might take us towards something dangerous or what have you, or just put us in some level of pain or anguish. We all do that. This is why oftentimes parents overreact because they did that too. And now they don't want their kids to do it, but we're going to do it. So imagine somebody that maybe your child, maybe a friend or whatever, they've made a choice that is just not going to work out well. You already know that. It's just not going to work out well. But they're going to make that choice anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it. This is something that most parents and people eventually come to understand. People are going to do what they're going to do, and there's not a hell of a lot you can do about it. Did you just hear what I said? There's not a lot you can do. But there's something you can be. And this is a whole other discussion, you know, developmentally speaking, for a lot of other reasons. But there's a shift that needs to be made, is that the older that people in our lives get that we're relating with, the less we can do for them, but the more we can be for them. So you see this person kind of making a choice that's taking them down a dark road, potentially dangerous. They could be putting themselves in harm's way. The question then is, what role will you play? Or who are you going to be for them? You know that you can't do anything. So here's the deal, parents, or anybody for that matter. You can't provide coaching. You can't lecture. You can't give direction. You can't give advice. And so there's nothing you can do because they're going to do what they're going to do. Now they're walking towards walking towards the edge of a cliff. They're going to get there, but at what pace will they get there? So some teen may say, screw you, mom, dad, I'm going to do what I want to do. You think I'm such a failure or whatever. The people I'm hanging out with are such losers. I'll show you. And so here they go. Now they're walking down this path. Wouldn't it be fair to say that if you really cared about this person, You wouldn't want them to move faster down the path. You wouldn't want to increase the speed at which they reach their demise, right? So, parents, don't do anything to increase the speed. Quit nagging, quit advice giving, quit trying to coach, quit lecturing. At least don't, push somebody towards their demise. But that's what parents often do, is they keep doing that strategy. And now, they're saying, well, my son or daughter is being oppositional or defiant. Yeah, it's gotten to that point because you keep utilizing a strategy that doesn't work. It's not supposed to work. You should be helping your son or daughter build self-efficacy through exercising a free will choice. Well, parent might say, well, that's kind of hard to do because I can see that my son or daughter is making some poor choices and it's not going to work out well. Okay, that's life. You've made poor choices that haven't worked out well. How do you think your parents felt when they saw you going down that road and there wasn't a darn thing that they could do about it, right? We all have to face this because we're all human beings and we're always making choices that aren't the best choices, right? Okay, we need to grow up and just accept that's life. So what role are we going to play? We have to figure out that. We have to figure out what position we're going to take, where we're going to be grounded. We're going to have to figure that out because we live on a planet of imperfect human beings who are not always going to make the best choices. And there's nothing we can do about it. You know that if you start to nag or lecture or give advice or direction, that's just going to push them farther towards their demise. That's just going to throw fuel on the fire of opposition, if you will, and defiance. So this is a place where, as human beings, we need to grow up. We need to reconcile this, and this is a place where we will experience anxiety and our own distress and our own grief. We need to figure out what role we're going to play, what position we're going to take. We're going to need to figure out who we're called to be in this situation, right? So this is another piece that parents need to really understand, right? Is that your children are going to make some choices and there's nothing you can do. So what can you do, right? If you will, or what is it that you can be here? So imagine your son or daughter is going down this dark path, and the farther they get down that path, the darker it gets. But every once in a while, maybe they turn their head back because going down a dark path is scary. It's full of different kinds of disappointments and stressors and maybe even some pain. And so, every once in a while we look back on our path, you know, we look back and we maybe start to miss home a little bit, like somebody who's run away from home, right? And you think it's a good idea at the time. Maybe, a young person has said, screw you, mom or dad, I'm running away. Now they run away and they're going down this dark path. Yeah, now it's getting cold. Now it's getting a little scary. They're getting a little hungry and they start thinking, maybe I could go home. But then the question is what do you get to go home to, right? So when you think about the path that you're going down and the choices that you've made, there'll be moments where, you think to yourself, well, maybe I should rethink this. Or maybe I should, talk to my mom or my dad a little bit more. But then maybe you get this image in your mind, oh, geez, if I go home, all I'm going to do is get yelled at. I'm going to get criticized. I'm going to be nagged. I'm going to be lectured. So then the person is saying to themselves, well, gee, it would be kind of nice to go home and kind of reconcile some of this, but the price is too high. I'd rather just keep going and fend for myself, you know? And then this is what a lot of parents are concerned with because they know when their child goes down that path, who are they going to encounter? Other people who are on that path, other people who have not made good decisions in their life, other people who are suffering and in some level of desperation, right? It's a you know um, it's full of peril, right? Because you're going to encounter, if you will, some shady characters, and could be taken advantage of and could be hurt. Parents are always concerned with that. I don't want my son or daughter, to end up, on the streets or whatever it is. And it's like, well, there's a way where you can speed up that process if you're not careful, by what's coming out of your mouth, by the position that you've taken, by the role that you've chosen to play. But I say, when all of us are making bad decisions, and we go down that road and we're experiencing the consequences of that, and we go, oh, geez, maybe I should rethink this. And we look back a little bit, and it's important for us to see what. And I think about a lighthouse. It's important for us to see the light. Like when we're in the dark, when we're experiencing darkness, pain, and suffering, we want to be able to look back and go, oh yeah, wow, I'd way better, I want to be over there. That'd be a way better option for me. I miss that. I miss home. I want to come home. And then, if in your mind you think, oh yeah, when I walk in, or when I walk in the door or knock on the door, I'm going to be hugged. I'm going to be embraced. I'm going to be accepted. I'm going to be invited in. I'm going to be welcomed. And there's going to be a warm meal for me. And I'm going to be able to sit by the fireplace with my dad, or, you know, sit on the couch with my mom and, have a chat, or whatever it is. And you have these really nice kind of memories of what it is like. It's much easier to come home, isn't it? It's much easier to turn around and reconcile. It gives opportunity for us as human beings, or for your child or teen, to come home and say, yeah, I want to rethink my decision. And they might even say, what are your thoughts? Is this making some sense? It even becomes more the issue when maybe somebody has experienced trauma in their lives. Oftentimes when we experience traumatic events in our lives, one of the main feelings that seems we experience as people is a feeling of being out of control. The anxiety, the fear, the loss of being out of control. It happens all the time, doesn't it? Look, kids and all of us, we go through events. We go through our parents' divorces. We go through, our parents deciding to move across the country or whatever. And when we get ripped away from our community, from our friends, from the things that we've come to love. I mean, when we're little, we get attached to a lot of things. We get attached to the parks that we go to, the bedroom that we had. Everything like that becomes so important um, to us. And so to be ripped away from that and have no input, no influence, no control over that, or again, there's so many things that can occur that can leave us with that experience of being out of control. So when somebody's experienced trauma and they feel a sense of a loss of control, what do you think is going to be really important for them as they move forward in life? To feel in control, right? And so when you've got a parent, or other circumstances, but parents who come in and then say, lecture and give advice and counsel, and essentially saying, do it my way, the child is immediately going to go, no, not doing it your way. I trusted you once before to care about me and to keep me safe and to keep my life stable, and to make good decisions. And you didn't do that. So I learned from that the only one I can really trust is myself. And so I'm going to make my own decisions now. So, you know, the child is naturally going to become defiant. And if the parent continues to push and push and push and lecture and nag, and they're going to become oppositional. So in other words, it's reflexive. It can be pathological. In other words, anything the parent says, the child immediately is going to oppose. It could be the best of ideas. It could, by this time, maybe the parent has even realized that, hey, I've been pushy, and like I put my child through some things that has probably traumatized them. But now, because these patterns have been so persistent for so many years, it's like now, what, you expect your child to just come into compliance? No, they've developed this pathway, if you will, within themselves that is just immediate and reflexive. So they call it pathological, right? It's kind of like, without thought, the son or daughter is just going to oppose you. So now the question is, how do you deal with someone who's defiant and oppositional? Well, you may not know how, but you know things to avoid, right? You can't lecture, you can't give advice, you can't give information, you can't give direction. Now, when I say can't, I think that should be the rule and not the exception, right? I mean, there's going to be moments when hopefully the relationship is repaired enough where you can, some coaching or something that you have to offer um, can be helpful, but it's very likely it won't be. That's why I say it's more the rule. Just stay away from that. Stay away from that. Well, what can you do instead? Well, you can, as they say, give options. You can approach conversations with your son or daughter in humility, in open-mindedness, in curiosity. What do I mean by that? Well, it's kind of like, oh, geez, I see that you're interested in looking for your first job or whatever. That's great. What are you thinking? So here's the curiosity. What are you thinking? Kind of, what ideas do you have about this? See, you as a parent already know how to get a job. You already know the resources. You already know all this. But if you were to try to step in and share all your knowledge, that's going to blow up in your face, and you're going to rob your son or daughter of an opportunity to build self-efficacy, right? To build self-confidence. So you can't say anything, but you can be curious. Oh, really? What are your thoughts on that? What's your plan? Oh, cool. They might share with you your plan or their plan, and you're thinking to yourself, man, this is not going to produce any results. They're going to go out and send out, or deliver 5 resumes today. What's the likelihood of, the odds are against them receiving a call back, because you got to, do way more. You got to put in more effort. And so all this, but you can't say that. Keep that to yourself. And you might think, well, I'd be doing my son or daughter a disjustice, like, in that. It's like, how's that being respectful? That I just let them go out and fail and fail? Yes, actually, let that happen. Yes, that's your role. Your position right now is one of allowing them to exercise free will choice, right? So they then can learn from that, and hopefully they can come home, and when they come home and go, geez, that didn't work out very well, or I haven't had a call back and it's been 2 weeks, and you're not going to say, well, I told you so, or of course that you're not getting, because let me tell you why. And so you'll be tempted to kick in all your best advice and wisdom. Don't do that. If you were to just remain curious and then go, oh, really? Wow, I know I know. Now here's a technique here. Then now you're going to affirm your child's, what I call their inner code of honor. You're going to affirm your child's virtues. So in other words, oh, really? That's interesting, because I know what I know about you is that you're really kind of dedicated and energetic, and uh, you know really um, interested in being kind of like independent. Um, So, interesting. So you see, I kicked in the curiosity. I affirmed my son or daughter's virtues, and then I might say, well, what are your thoughts? What's your plan now? Well, I'm going to do this and this and this. Here you go again. Once again, you're going to say, geez, in your mind, you're going to say, Gee, that's not really going to work out either, right? Because they're going to go, well, I'm going to go to this job board and website or whatever, and that there are thousands of people who look at that website. It's like one of the most popular places to go. Everybody and their dog is using it. So, now they're going to submit resumes through the internet. Right? Not going to produce much probably. But you're going to remain curious and you're going to remain, affirmative, if you will, of their virtues. Oh, well, let me know how that goes. I good for you for, taking the initiative, and for being dedicated and, tenacious here. There's it's not always easy to get a job. So good on you. Let me know how it goes. Then you let that go a while and then they come back and they say, no results. Then you go, so you catching on, right? You catching on how to do this, right? Kick in the curiosity. Oh, really? Hmm. Well, you know what? I know that, you've always been pretty tough and, and focused, and I'm sure you're not going to let this one get to you. So what are you thinking? Here's the curiosity again, your plan, right? Okay, well, let me know how that goes, right? And so this is what a parent does, right? Especially in those teen years. This is what we call supporting, facilitating, orchestrating, whatever you want to call it, individuation. We're helping our sons and daughters become their own unique individual, become your own man, your own woman. The only way you can do that is by exercising free will, trying some stuff out. It doesn't work. You come back home, as I said, because you're not going to get yelled at, you're not going to get criticized, you're not going to get a lecture. It's really easy to come home, you know, as a parent. I might even say, as a dad, I might say, oh, well, really? Yeah, I'd like to know more. See, now you're really doing a good job of orchestrating this, because now you're maintaining the relationship and the bond, but you're also your strategies as a parent are way more advanced. You're way beyond advice giving right now. You're going, I'm gonna like be 5 steps ahead, and I'm gonna come in the back door on this one. And the way I'm gonna do that is really subtle. And wait, how is that gonna happen? I might say, well, you know what? Let's grab a sandwich and let's go out on the patio and tell me more about that. Again, wow, I know you're a really dedicated and, you know, committed individual. You always have been. So I'm sure you're going to kind of go back at this. What's the plan? Hmm. And I might say, well, what do you think? Were you open to some thoughts, some ideas? Right now, we've got an opportunity to share a little bit. See, but if I would have come at this as a parent and saying, this is what you need to do. I've got some idea. This is what you need to do. I'm really good at getting a job. I'm really good at doing resumes. I'm really good at doing interviews. Or, I know what it's like. I've gone down this same road. Let me tell you really what works here. As soon as if you were to go down that road as a parent, if you were to try that strategy, what do you think would happen? Your son or daughter would say, they first of all they would tolerate you, and all they would hear was blah 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 blah, and then they would go, well, I gotta go. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends, or I'm gonna go to my room, or I'm gonna, if they would just shut you off, they would shut you down because you're a source of irritation. Then parent would go, well, I don't know what's going on, why they don't, respect my knowledge or want to hear what I have to say on it. That I could make it all so much easier for them. And then, as a counselor, I would be thinking to myself, yeah, and that would be great for you, wouldn't it, parent? Because then you can feel like you are, effective as a parent. Well, you needed to work on your self-efficacy a long time ago. So why are you utilizing your kid in order to bolster your own self-esteem? It's like, no, don't do that, right? Stop that. Can you see again how parents really quickly could become their own worst enemy in this, and causing defiance and opposition? So the kid says, screw it, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. You see, I don't need to hear from you. So there's the defiance. And you know, you know, my dad says to, you know, go and do a volunteer job. Well, screw that. I'm not going to volunteer. There's the opposition immediately. What does my dad know? Doesn't know it. He doesn't know anything. That's how it all goes down. And like I said, if somebody has a trauma history with this, the need to control the situation is going to be higher. And the more need to control, the more expansive almost you have to make the conversation. And so the person doesn't feel like they're out of control. You want to affirm the person and their ability to be effective. And you want to provide some, some options and support them uh, thinking about options themselves, creating some options and going down some paths, even though it's not going to work out. That's the deal. It reminds me of the old biblical story around the prodigal son. Some of you may know this story, right? For whatever reason, we don't know within the story that there was some conflict or tension or whatever resentment the son had against the father. And he goes off and does his own thing, makes some poor decisions, and goes down a road that the father knows is not a good road, but the son does it, right? Of course, one of the major points of the story is that the son eventually returns home. And he returns home to what kind of a parent? You see, it's kind of like I was saying, this, we make choices that aren't always good, and we go out and experience, those choices, which often, have the initial appearance of some sort of payoff, some sort of instant gratification, some sort of seduction, if you will, lies within that choice. But we go down that road and we experience pain and suffering, and we look back. And so, in the prodigal son, at some point, because of the pain and suffering he's in, says, geez, home wasn't that bad. Maybe I could return home, but I'm going to return home knowing that I don't deserve it. But maybe I could return home, humbly and uh, kind of rely on the good graces of my father. And so, the way the story presents is that it gives every opportunity for the parent to be resentful. Hey, you're my kid. You kind of cursed me out. You didn't respect me, et cetera, et cetera. And you ran away the way you did. Very shameful activity. You've been doing dishonorable things. There's no way I'm going to allow you back in this house. There's no way, that's kind of the typical traditional thing that would have happened, you know, especially back in the day, right? Of those times where, you know, um, obedience to parents, et cetera, were, an absolute. And if you were not, then you were more or less exiled, and your name was stricken from the record. In other words, you're no longer my child. You're no longer my son. You're no longer my heir. That would have been tradition. That would have been the normal thing to do for this parent, to have all sorts of evidence as to why, this child is not allowed back home. But instead, what does the father do? The father actually sees his son coming back way, down the road yet, and his father runs out to greet him, puts a royal robe around him, and says, "Hey, let's have a party. Guess what? My son is home." If that would have been a critical parent, a critical father, if there would have been punishment, upon his return, shame being used against him, things of this nature, the son probably would have said, "Screw it, I'm not coming home. I'd rather stay out on the streets." Right? And I think that's what sometimes a lot of folks do. Instead of come home, they just choose to stay in the streets, and they get entrenched in that lifestyle, and then it's really hard to get them back. So anyway, appreciate your tuning in here, but this is a huge theme that parents deal with all the time: opposition and defiance. You know, so parents, be really willing to kind of look at your own history, your own background. Ask yourself, am I being overzealous here? What's fueling that? Did I go through my own tough times when I was a kid, or tough times in life where now I've said to myself, I'd never want my son or daughter to, make the same mistakes I have. My God, you guys know this, right? Like, just this is just an epidemic of parents who say that. We all feel this way to some degree, but we really got to catch ourselves at it and slap our own hand here, because we need to stop that, right? We need to stop this idea of, I don't want my son or daughter going making the same mistakes I did. I think that's a desire that we can have, but we need to keep that to ourselves, and we need to reconcile that within ourselves, right? Because if we don't, then it's going to get the best of us, and our emotions are going to get the best of us, and then we're going to move forward and become overzealous, so we're going to become pushy, and we're going to, you know, irritate and inflame situations and cause our kids to go down, potentially harmful paths. And we're actually going to accelerate their movement down that path. And we're going to leave no option for them to come home, because they know when they come home, what are they going to get? A lecture. They're going to get reminded of all the mistakes that they've made, and they're going to get reminded that they should have listened, and that's just really excruciatingly painful, um, that none of us like to experience that, right? So parents got to be careful to not be your own worst enemy here, and take into consideration, like I said, there's normal human development says that we all strive to exercise free will so we can build skill and capacity, which leads to self-confidence and self-esteem. Like, that's what you want for your children, and this is how it is built. So don't let your lecturing and your advice giving and your coaching and all the things that you're doing that you think are so well intentioned, don't let that undermine an even greater desire in your heart, is to have your son or daughter build skill and capacity, as I said, and to care about themselves, to respect themselves, to build self-confidence and self-esteem. This is how it's done. And then if your son or daughter has experienced any trauma in life, just know that the natural outcome of that is going to for them have been a feeling of the loss of control. And so naturally, wanting to be in control is going to be high on the priority list for that individual. So then how do you learn to work with that need for control? And I shared that with you, to use, a curiosity approach to affirm virtues. That's one way to do it. It's a much better way than kind of pushing your son or daughter down the road of darkness, accelerating that journey, right? So a lot said here, but I invite you to join me every Tuesday night, me and a lot of other parents, in our parent leadership group. It's from 6 to 7:30. It's online. So if you'd like to be part of that, it's free. Just let me know and I'll get you the invitation. All right. Have a good day. Take care.